Hello, Jorbs here coming at you with another Spire side chat. Today I want to talk about how good HALT is, and my answer is, oh my god, are you kidding me? What? What? This card makes 12 block for 0 energy. This isn't allowed, is it? When you upgrade this card, it makes 18 block for 0 energy. It makes another 6 block when you upgrade it. What? So, HALT, I mean, I just like acted like it was completely imbalanced and stuff, but HALT is actually one of my favorite cards in the class, and while I think that the numbers could come down on it, I have a lot of fun building decks around it, and so I'm not gonna like complain too much about this card. I think it's really sweet to play with. The thing about HALT is that making 18 block for 0 energy is very, very, very good. And it's not that hard for Watcher to be in Wrath at some point in a turn and then leave Wrath by the end of that turn. And so Wrath is a stance where you want to like enter the stance, play your attacks, and then get out of the stance, because while you're in Wrath, you deal double damage and receive double damage. Double attack damage, rather. So the Beat of Death won't deal you double damage, but enemy attacks will. And so all of a sudden, HALT is not only making you a ton of block in this turn, where you're getting to enter Wrath and play attacks and then leave Wrath, not only making you a ton of block, but it's also doing it for 0 energy, which means that on that valuable turn where you were in Wrath and doubling the damage from your attacks, you didn't have to spend energy to block for 18. You could just spend all of your energy on attacks instead. That's really cool. That's really, really valuable. So, the downside of HALT is that if you're not in Wrath and the card's not upgraded, this just gains you 3 block for 0 energy. And if you have a Snecko Eye, maybe it doesn't even cost 0 energy, maybe it costs 3, which is definitely not as good. But the thing about Watcher is that Watcher is actually very good, can quite consistently enter Wrath and then leave Wrath over the course of a turn. And I talked about this a decent amount already when I talked about Tantrum and Simmering Fury, but there are just some fairly available combos for Watcher where like Tantrum gets put back in your draw pile, so you draw it over and over again, keep on going to Wrath. Simmering Fury draws you 2 extra cards and goes in your discard pile, where you can fetch it back with a Meditate Plus. It's not that hard for Watcher to end up in a situation where she is entering Wrath most of her turns. And if I have a deck where I'm entering Wrath like more than half of my turns, HALT is insane. Now, it's not that great on turns where I don't enter Wrath, but it's still a pretty darn good card on aggregate, right? So the next question to ask when we're thinking about a card which is very good some turns and maybe not that good other turns, and maybe just for a thought experiment here, let's say we have a deck where we successfully enter Wrath on 50% of our turns. Either we were still in Wrath from last turn, or we're going into Wrath with one of our cards. So that means that HALT blocks for 12 half the time, and it blocks for 3 the other time, which is like, we'll still play it probably because it costs 0, unless we're against like Time Eater or something, but it's definitely not as good. What are the things that decide whether a card that's really good sometimes but quite bad other times is worth including in your deck? The biggest answer is card draw and card selection. So if you're drawing 7 cards a turn, your average draw gets noticeably better if some of your cards are really good sometimes and really bad other times, because you can spend your 3 or 4 energy on the cards which are really good and not spend them on the cards that are really bad. If you're not playing all of the cards that you're drawing, if you have excess card draw, that is generally going to be true. The same if you have excess card manipulation. So this is where bells are going off with Watcher. Watcher has so much card manipulation. The Scry 5, that lets you like see 5. That's how many cards a normal character draws in an entire turn. And you can look at your entire next hand and discard any of the ones that you don't want. And this is like a 9 block common. You know, that's pretty solid. Foresight. Foresight's another one, which I've talked about before. This is excellent at setting up your next hand. And Watcher has Scry in immense abundance and also has access to Meditate, which is an incredible card for setting up a big turn. And often on Watcher, the way that you deal damage is quite energy intensive. So often you'll want your big turn to be about like spending energy on cards, which deal damage with attack, right? But if you're going to spend all your energy on cards which deal damage with attack, you probably want to be able to block somehow. So maybe you need a card that blocks without costing energy. Oh, boom, HALT. So getting HALT back with Meditate is a pretty common play in my experience, and something that feels really good and very powerful. There isn't that often a card you can get back with Meditate which is going to block for 18 for 0 energy. Unless you have a HALT in your discard pile, at which point it's really not problematic to do that at all. To get something like that, we could like have Perseverance plus, and then we could have held it for like 4 turns to increase its block. And we could have also put an establishment in play so that the retained card's cost is reducing, so we get down to 0 cost. But that is so much more work than just having a HALT to start with. Like, it takes until turn 5 or something before that's even online, and HALT is just, it shows up at the start of the fight and it already does that. So when I'm looking at HALT, the reasons I wouldn't take HALT are that I don't have much card draw or card manipulation, and I'm not sure whether my deck is going to like want to take Snecko Eye. If like HALT's not a particularly impressive card yet, and I'm going into the Act 1 boss fight and would like to be able to take Snecko Eye at the end of it, I may hold off on picking up HALT. But once my deck is starting to feel like fairly well developed, it has a little bit of card draw in it, it has some card manipulation in it, it can get in and out of Wrath somewhat regularly. At that point, usually more toward the second half of the run, honestly, I'm often quite excited about picking up HALTs, and I would recommend keeping your eye out for them. Sometimes your deck only really needs one. If like the reason you're going to be grabbing it is largely Meditate, like sometimes one is enough. But it's also a powerful enough card that if you have a deck that's entering Wrath like more than half the time, you could easily want 2 or 3. So that's my quick spiel about HALT. I kept this one under 10 minutes. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the chat, and I will see you next time.